So I think for any mother, you always worry about your children, but the more he became a preteen and he got older and his features began to change and he got taller, and it was more so he looked older than what he was. My son is pretty tall, so he's 6'5", but you know, he was walking to the store with his friends and they all had hoodies on, and the police told them he stopped them because they had hoodies on. But when you put that into a larger perspective, what teenager doesn't wear a hoodie? And so he began to get profiled really early. I want to say 14. And then the older he got and the more he got hair on his face, you know, he got taller, he began to get profiled not just by the police, but then other young men in the community walking up on him. Where are you from? That terrible question that most young men hear: where are you from? Where are you from? And you know, for my son, he used to always say, I'm not from anywhere. I can't help where my mom lives. You know what I mean? Like, we live where we live, but that's like out of my control, and I just feel like no young person should have to go through that. But then it got to a point where it didn't matter if he answered that question or not, because of where we lived. He was guilty by association, and so he became a target because of that. And there were 2 separate occasions where I was standing next to him and somebody tried to take his life, and I felt like at that time that I was angry. There were parts of me that wanted to get me a license to carry and figure out how to protect my family, but then I had to think about it holistically from the person who was trying to do that. For you to get to the point where you want to take someone else's life, you have to be really hurting. And then when I began to do the work of working with those young people who were active shooters, I began to realize that they also suffered. They suffered from either having one parent, no parents, you know, difficult dynamics in their household that my kids would probably never even imagine going through. And understanding that when you look at some of the things that they post on social media, one young man posted, no mother, no father, nothing to live for. It's hard to appeal to someone who feels like they have nothing to lose. The root cause is poverty. Violence usually occurs in the most economically disadvantaged communities and the most poverty-stricken communities. But when you look at the city of Boston, who tries to come across as progressive and, you know, a state that is all-inclusive to everyone, the truth of the matter is this is one of the most segregated, racist cities in the United States, because it's a 1-mile radius for the life expectancy to change. So you go from Back Bay and you cross Mass Ave to Roxbury, and there's a 33-year decline in life expectancy. And so that's one category. But when you look at economically disadvantaged, Roxbury is 32.3% below poverty level. The median income is $28,000. You can't find housing making $28,000 a year. And then we're the first community where schools get cut, the budget gets cut for schools. And, you know, we're not living paycheck to paycheck. We're living moment to moment. You have people who are paying the rent but not paying the light bill, or they're paying the rent and light, but then there's no food in the refrigerator. And I feel like, you know, one of the responses that have come up from politicians and people that represent us in this community is, oh, we'll just give them a job. But it goes far beyond a job. We have to take a holistic approach to what's happening in our communities. You have a lot of hurt, traumatized, disadvantaged people who are trying to figure out how to survive. It almost feels like being in a third world country at times. I think first we have to stop being reactionary. We have to stop reacting. We have to be proactive. The crime, the violence that is happening in our streets is not new. The city of Boston, the mayor, the police department, all are they're fully aware of the crime that's plaguing the city. It happens every summer. It happens every winter. I think we have to get ahead of it, and we have to be mindful that we can't continue to keep funding the same broken systems and expecting something different. We have to empower community activists and people who are out here doing this work and support their efforts. It has to be a collective. One of the things that I admired back during the period of the Boston Miracle was that it wasn't just the police, it wasn't politicians, it wasn't ministers, it was community who guided the police and those people into the community to build that relationship in order for crime to be on a decrease. And unless we look at it from a holistic approach, we're going to continue to fail. We have to understand that we can't keep throwing jobs at a program, and we can't keep jumping on the newest hashtag of trauma to try to say that we're doing something. We have to actually get out here and offer these young people something. You can't ask someone to get rid of their gun, which is their protection, and you can't ask them to stop selling drugs if that's their means to survive, without offering them something in return. I think we need to establish our own systems of operation. For instance, I started a movement called Violence in Boston, and what that means is that we're providing people services live and direct, right? We're not making you dial a phone number. We're not saying, hey, log on to this and we'll help you. We're saying that you reach out to us, we show up, and we do those services right in your home. We launched a Backpack 68 program to be able to feed young people, right? And that's direct service. That's us giving you food to feed you, because a young person, from the time a young person has lunch on Friday at school to the time they go back to school on Monday, is 68 hours. A lot of our young people that are Boston Public School children, the only meal they get is the one that they receive at school. So ensuring that while they're home over the weekend, they're not starving, and they're able to also bring that food home to their family, and giving them 68 hours worth of food to be able to feed their family. We have to create our own systems and programs and implement them. We're going to do the work of helping our community while we hold elected officials, community members, and the Boston Police Department accountable. Because the issue is this: we can do this work, but those are the people who are receiving funding for doing this work with no assessment tool and no actual plan, and they continue to speak to the same population of people over and over again without trying to get a broad spectrum of what's actually happening out here. And so I would say to them, at some point you have to stop listening to respond and listen to hear.